Hello, I'm Claire, and recently my parents have placed my well-being at risk to fulfill their own desires. My upbringing hasn't been ideal. I reside in a rough neighborhood, and my father was constantly involved in dubious dealings with his associates, as he referred to them. It's best not to pay them any attention. Whenever my father stopped to visit these associates while we were in the car, my mother always emphasized that I should never engage with them. On occasions when my father wished to host his friends at our house, my mom would arrange for me to spend the night at my friend Lily's place. I adored Lily's home. It was spacious, tidy, with a beautiful yard and a pool. Her parents were warm and her dad was a great cook. I often found myself wishing I lived in a house like hers. The best part was, Lily never flaunted her family's wealth or made me feel inferior. She always made me feel like an integral part of their family. As the years went by, her house became my sanctuary. However, the disparities in our circumstances were unmistakable. I remember one day when we were searching for tape in her mother's desk and stumbled upon an unsealed, bulging envelope. I couldn't resist peeking inside, only to find it crammed with cash. Curiosity got the best of me, and I asked Lily about it. She casually mentioned that it was the solarium fund. Puzzled, I inquired further, and Lily explained that her parents were saving up to build a sunroom onto their house. They'd stash any extra money in that envelope without even counting it, and her mom would often say that one day they'd open it and be pleasantly surprised. I tried to act nonchalant, but deep down, I couldn't help feeling a tinge of resentment. My parents struggled to make ends meet, barely affording the rent. Meanwhile, Lily's family seemed poised to expand their wealth. That night, I got into a heated argument with my parents. "Why are we living in such a rundown place?" I demanded. "Both of you work. Why don't we have anything nice?" My mother accused me of being ungrateful, and my dad retorted that if I disliked our living situation, I could leave, that I'd simply be one less mouth to feed. Their argument escalated, something that had become all too common lately. I retreated to my bedroom, but a few minutes later, I heard my mom leaving the house. Where could she possibly be going at that hour? The next day, I returned home to find her in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" I asked, genuinely concerned. She initially shook her head, but I pressed her to share. "Mom, please tell me." I thought she was still upset about our argument from the previous night. Finally, she looked at me and uttered, "I'm in trouble." 1,000 anxieties raced through my mind. "What kind of trouble?" I inquired. "I owe a friend of your dad's $800, she confessed. I was taken aback. She explained that she had borrowed the money to buy a new dress and jewelry for a date. "A date?" I repeated, utterly confused. "You mean with Dad?" She nodded wearily. "I've met someone else." At first, I was furious. I couldn't help but cry and question why she had cheated on Dad. However, as I reflected, it became clear that my father wasn't a very good person, and I could understand why my mom wanted to be with someone else. What mattered most was that she was in trouble, and I needed to help her. She confided that her predicament was dire. They had threatened to harm her and our family if she didn't come up with the money. She had around $500, but couldn't manage the rest, and she couldn't tell my dad. I was at a loss for what to do, so I held her while she cried. That night, I couldn't sleep, filled with fear that my dad's friends would come to our house and hurt us. I racked my brain, wondering what I could do to protect my family. I held a part-time job, but the money I earned barely made a dent in my mother's financial struggles. Nonetheless, I made it a point to give her whatever I could spare. The following day, I visited Lily after school, attempting to engage in our usual enjoyable activities. However, Lily sensed that something was amiss and inquired about my demeanor. I had promised my mom I wouldn't confide in anyone, so I kept my worries to myself. Later, while Lily was in the bathroom, a sudden recollection struck me. The envelope in her mother's desk, the one earmarked for the sunroom fund. I tried to dismiss the thought, but it kept resurfacing. They didn't really need a sunroom, did they? Why should they acquire things they didn't require when my family struggled to afford the essentials? Before I could stop myself, I reached into the drawer, plucked several 20s from the envelope, and secreted them in my pocket. I carefully returned the envelope to its place. That evening, I attempted to savor a meal prepared by Lily's dad, but I felt too queasy to eat much. I excused myself early and headed home. When I got there, I handed the money to my mom, telling her, "Here, I made this in tips at work." I knew it was only $80, but I had to find a way to procure more. I wanted to ask my mom why her new boyfriend couldn't lend her the money, given that he was partly responsible for her predicament. Instead, I assured her that I would secure more money the following day. That night, I tossed and turned, plagued by guilt over what I had done to Lily and her family, who had always been so kind to me. I consoled myself by repeating that they didn't truly need the money and hadn't done anything to merit it. The next day, upon returning home from school, I discovered my mom attempting to scrub a red bull's eye off her car. Someone had vandalized it. "Help me," she pleaded urgently, "before your father sees it." Without hesitation, I grabbed a rag and joined her in the effort. While we toiled to clean the vandalized car, a car drove by at a slow pace. "Get down," my mother urged, shoving me behind her. I crouched low, my heart racing, overwhelmed by fear. Were we about to face an attack right in front of our own home? Thankfully, the car eventually continued on its way. "We need the money now," my mother emphasized. So I bided my time and made my way to Lily's house. When her mother called her away for a moment to assist with something, I seized the opportunity to open the envelope and count out the $220 I needed. That night, I handed the money to my mom, who enveloped me in a tight hug, commending me for being such a wonderful daughter. She didn't even inquire about the source of the money. I couldn't help but wonder why I had suddenly started earning so much in tips when my job usually paid so little. Another sleepless night awaited me. The following day, Lily appeared troubled. When I inquired about what was bothering her, she disclosed that my parents suspected someone of pilfering money from the sunroom fund. My heart froze in terror. I was certain she would accuse me, and I wouldn't be able to deny it. The thought of losing her friendship and being forever barred from their beautiful, secure home weighed heavily on me. Additionally, the specter of potential legal consequences haunted me. "They think it's my brother's friend Skylar," Lily revealed. "This kid is bad news." I gaped in astonishment. They didn't suspect me. I was off the hook. Yeah, I couldn't shake the guilt and worry about what might befall Skylar if they placed the blame on him. I was a wreck when I returned home that day, and my already frayed nerves didn't benefit from the fact that my arrival coincided with my parents locked in a shouting match. My dad had discovered the truth about the loan my mom had secured from his associates, as well as her extramarital affair. He accused her of committing terrible deeds to acquire the money needed to repay the loan. Desperate to end the chaos, I impulsively interjected, "I stole Lily's money." Both my parents ceased their shouting and turned to look at me, bewildered. "Your family has an envelope where they save money," I added. "I'll pay them back, I promise." I just didn't know what else to do, I pleaded. My dad's gaze shifted from me to my mom, and he expressed his disgust that she had drawn me into this mess. He shoved the stolen money in my face and instructed me to return it to Lily's family. He added that they would find an alternative way to settle his debts with his friends. Then he stormed out of the room. My mom sat down at the table, tears streaming down her face because she understood the difficult path I had to take. I gathered my resolve, went to Lily, and handed her the money, confessing everything. "Do you hate me now?" I asked, my voice trembling with anxiety. She took a moment to respond, saying, "I don't know what to say." I braced myself for her rejection, expecting to never hear from her again. However, the next day, she extended an invitation to visit. When I arrived, her entire family was gathered around the table, and I found it hard to meet their eyes. Lily's mother handed me an envelope and said, "This is a loan to help your mother out of debt. You can take as long as you need to pay it back." I was stunned and couldn't help but ask why they were being so generous. Lily explained, "I wish you had told me you were in trouble. I thought we were friends." I couldn't believe it. She was upset because I hadn't confided in her, not because I had stolen from her. I tried to refuse the loan, but Lily's family insisted, assuring me that if I ever needed help in the future, all I had to do was ask. I apologized profusely and made a million promises to never betray their trust again. I vowed to repay the loan as soon as I could. The period that followed was challenging, marked by my mother paying off her debts and my parents navigating a messy divorce. Throughout it all, Lily stood by my side, her unwavering loyalty providing me with the strength to endure. I realized how fortunate I was to have such a true friend, a realization that might never have surfaced if our friendship hadn't been put to the test in such a profound way.